This is TWiT.
Yeah, so we've been looking a little bit forward between nothing and Android 13. Let's look a little bit back. A friend of the show, Will Saddleberg, wrote a really great article kind of marking the 10-year anniversary of Google I/O 2012 as, quote, a high watermark for innovative hardware that has yet to be approached again. And if you need a reminder, 2012 was that amazing year where during a presentation for Google Plus, which, Google Plus, Sergey Brin interrupted the presentation to basically show that they had a team of skydivers wearing then recently announced Google Glass as they kind of live from a plane, jumped out of a plane onto the roof of the Moscone Center. And can you imagine the permits they got for that? Like actually jumping on the Moscone Center. I was actually, as an adult, this is what I think of now. I was like, wow, I wonder what kind of permits they got for skydiving
right?
onto the roof of the Moscone Center.
So true.
And and all of the skydivers were wearing Google Glass. So it was a really interesting, kind of hypey demonstration, ridiculous, over the top demonstration of this new hardware. And I hadn't seen this in a long time, and I watched it afterwards. Even after the skydivers landed, they gave him to BMX bikers who jumped over the buildings, and then they actually rappelled down the side of the building to the Moscone Center and gave him to another BMX biker who just charged up stage to where Sergey Brin was, and everyone was wearing Google Glass, and it was it's kind of a feeling you just don't get anymore.
No.
It was kind of ridiculous, stunty, just over the top. And I kind of watching this, it kind of makes me sad because I feel like it's hard to feel skeptical or cynical watching this because it's just so silly.
Yeah.
And
It's so
over the top.
It's so Web 2.0 hubris, and
Yeah.
And Jason, if you recall, we were there.
Yeah, well, I remember that.
Right.
Absolutely.
I was sitting next to Jason during this presentation and couldn't believe it was happening. But also, not only did this have the skydiving, but this was the ill-fated Nexus Q event too, right?
Yep.
It was. Actually, Will makes some really good kind of parallels between, the Google Sphere as it is now and this 2012 announcement. Because yes, Nexus Q was announced, this little... I knew Jason was going to love this story because of the Nexus Q, which was that kind of really black, spherical, kind of it's basically was a precursor to Chromecast. And it was really interesting because I watched the video again, and it's all kind of talking about how, it felt like I was trying to drag things back to gadgets because at this point, we're increasingly more software driven, and they really wanted a cool gadget. And it was this whole social streaming experience, but you could only stream content hosted on Google Play branded apps and YouTube, which was a little bit limiting. Nexus Q app was
limiting for what did it cost? Like a $300 device?
$300.
Did it ever go on sale?
No.
Did it ever actually go on sale?
No.
Yeah.
People just got them for free, afterwards, right?
Yeah.
If you pre-ordered.
I still have mine.
Yeah, we had
mine.
one. Yeah, we still have ours, I think. Or maybe I made my husband throw it away. Finally, I don't remember, but and it's interesting because this was about a year before Chromecast came out, and obviously Chromecast went in the opposite direction. Was hyper cheap. I remember we had 3 of them because they were $30. They were more friendly to third party streaming content, and it actually was a good competitor in a world of Apple TVs and Rokus. But you can see kind of the start of that. Of those ideas and that kind of approaching this space with the Nexus Q. Nexus Q didn't go anywhere, but it was there in 2012. And kind of we'll talk some other stuff like Nexus 7s. The Nexus 7, the first
classic.
Google tablet was 2012. Classic.
$200 for the Nexus 7. That was that was what was so crazy about that. I mean, it was just high quality, low cost.
And portrait form factor, so it was very much like a Kindle, very direct Kindle competitor, and the second gen was even better. And I don't know. Does anyone have not fond memories of the Nexus 7? Just it was just a
my
great
7
tablet. I still
the
love
Nexus. The Nexus 7 passed my back pocket test. Remember?
That's right.
I could fit it in my back pocket.
That's right.
Not mine.
Yep.
Women pants issues, but and I didn't actually realize, but it actually had Google Now, which was kind of also the Google with the predictive cards that and it's kind of weird now thinking back then about Google using its swaths of data on you to try to anticipate and predict things. It was charming back then. It's a little bit different now how everyone is kind of matured and feels about Google and
for sure
data collecting but back then it was kind of interesting to have Google now and like, hey, you should leave at this time, or
magical.
like, hey, it was magical, and we kind of started seeing like the potential of data. We now also see the ills, but that came with the Nexus 7 and a bunch of other things. But I think there was a lot of really interesting, because now in 2022, 10 years later, augmented reality glasses are coming back. Chromecast is still doing really well, and then tablets have come back from the dead for the third or fifth or whatever time. And I think there is a sense of hype and kind of joy that is missing from Google I/O these days. We just all are kind of just seen there, been there, done that, and have a lot of opinions and maybe some disappointments. So there is something really special about that 2012 Google I/O, which Will kind of captured in his article. So it was really fun. You should definitely take a read and like watch the dang skydiving video again.
Yeah, we were showing parts of it.
Geez.
I mean, that keynote was really in looking back, kind of, that was a special year for Google I/O, because there really was a ton of excitement that year, and wonder and surprise. I mean, Android 4.1 Jelly Bean was the version that was happening then. Android as a platform still had a ways to go to mature, so there was still a lot that could be done to Android to really surprise things. And this kind of touches on what we're talking about with Nothing. We are 10 years advanced in technology from the time that was recorded. And I mean, everything has changed in 10 years. Our perceptions of what, data collection is good for. Back then, it was magical. But now, a lot of people see that data collection and harvesting as like an evil thing, or something, that has unintended consequence, and that's just one example. So, I mean, we just have a different outlook on what technology is, for better and for worse. Yeah.
Do you guys
think?
Do you guys think that because Google I/O has become such a showcase of the AI and the assistance capabilities, that it's lost some of that developer magic? Because it feels like the show is no longer about, I mean, it is about the Google products, but I just don't know that the keynote, which is what everybody sees, because we're, the general public is not watching the developer sessions afterwards the way that we are, and like pouring through this stuff, nor are they reading, the blogs and saying what's up. Do you think that because it's become the main focus, that it's lost sort of its charm and magic a bit?
I mean, I don't know. I'm curious. I mean, I do.
Ask a hard question.
I do think that it's lost some of its charm and magic for that
because
reason.
Now that's the primary part of the conversation. It's like become about that technology and the ethics behind it, and how Google's using that, which are all valid things. Yeah. But I just wonder if the developer conference is the place that we should be having those conversations.
Well, but the thing is that like you've already got Apple doing the same. True. Right. So, the Apple schedule of announcements, remember, it was like the January announcement was the big one. Then it shifted to WWDC, and then they also do one in the fall. I mean, like they're both doing the same thing, and it's an excuse to drive the developer conference, in its core has, the purpose to bring developers together to get feedback, to interface, to educate, to all that sort of stuff. But it becomes a very visible public hype fest. And the marketing PR opportunity is too good to give up. And so now the two have kind of merged, right? And it didn't used to be that way. Like WWDC wasn't a marketing event back in the day, if you remember. Mm-hmm. So
that's true. That's true.
I blame Google
capitalism
less.
Kill.
Well, yeah, I mean that's the summary, but I blame Google less for this flow than I would blame Apple. I feel like Apple paved the way for it. But I liked it a lot. I mean, it was a lot better when, and I feel like we've seen the ebb and flow of the fall announcement for Google to be important, not important, big, not big, right? And like, it seems like the only thing that they can really, really get behind is I/O, and it's a hybrid of the two now. So,
yeah. From a dev side, it's kind of interesting. As the dev side of it has also kind of mirrored the consumer side, where I think just after 10 years of a lot of this. And I think there's still some excitement on the dev side. Like there's always, in a similar way, there's always like crowd pleasing demos. There's features that we look forward to. And there is some hype still, but I think at the same time, after 10 years of Android dev and features that kind of fell flat, things that just didn't pan out, kind of like just mirroring a lot of the stuff that we just talked about, like dev tools are the same way. And I think we definitely, I think it's fair to say that devs mirror that feeling of like old hat, like hard to get as excited. We're probably at least 60% cynical. I think that's happened to us as well. And maybe that's just as a platform matures, we get old and we're all getting just old and cranky, and it takes a lot to impress us. So
yeah, I think there's some truth to that
mean?
too. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
We're going to show up to the meetups with like our vintage Android gear and just be like, man, we were around when this stuff was way easier, man.
Back in the day.
It was about the software,
Back in the day. Yeah.
I actually was talking to a junior dev, like she's still in school today, and I caught myself I guess like, I'm really sorry. I feel like I'm like an old Android dev talking about the good old days, because I kind of was I was kind of having this like whole rant about how, you know, back when Android first started, like unlike iOS, we had to like do all kinds of form factors and support all kinds of stuff, and it was a lot harder. And oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I'm talking like an old person. Yeah, it happened. Yeah, it happened. We kind of grew up with Android.
Yes,
we didn't have this back in my day. You know, all you kids these days with your flagship phones and
with your Kotlin and
with your Kotlin. Exactly.
Yeah. Well, cool stuff. Everybody should definitely read that piece in Android Police and remember what it was like when Google I/O was flashy and skydivey and stuff, and BMX bikey.